The file arrived encrypted on a Tuesday morning when frost still clung to Damascus rooftops like broken glass. Mahmoud al-Khaled, though that wasn't the name he'd been born with, nor the one his mother whispered in prayers, sat in a rented apartment overlooking an alley where vendors hawked oranges and bootleg cigarettes. His hands, thin-fingered and precise, moved across a laptop keyboard with the methodical rhythm of someone transcribing equations rather than coordinating the movement of weapons across 3 continents. The message contained a single line of code followed by coordinates and a date, October 15th, 2010, Milan to Rome, Intercity 582. He closed the laptop with the same deliberate care he applied to everything, as if unnecessary force might fracture the careful architecture of anonymity he'd spent decades constructing. Through the window, Damascus exhaled the familiar scent of diesel exhaust and cardamom coffee, the city's morning breath. Somewhere below, a child laughed. Mahmoud listened without expression, his face bearing the settled stillness of someone who learned long ago that expressions were data points others could read and catalog and eventually use against you. The decision to travel had been debated for weeks through encrypted channels and coded conversations conducted in cafes where ceiling fans turned lazy circles through cigarette smoke. His handlers in Gaza wanted him visible, operational, a demonstration of capability. Mahmoud preferred invisibility. He'd survived this long by becoming a ghost with financial records, a name that existed only in the narrow space between documentation and reality. But orders came wrapped in the language of necessity, and necessity was the only authority he'd ever truly acknowledged. He began preparations with the ritualistic precision that characterized every aspect of his operational methodology. The briefcase came first. Italian leather, purchased in Vienna 2 years prior, deliberately aged through careful application of oil and strategic scuffing. Inside, 3 pens, a notebook containing nothing but Arabic numerals arranged in sequences that meant everything to him and nothing to anyone else. A paperback copy of Machiavelli's The Prince with margins annotated in a cipher only 2 people alive could decode. The second person was already dead, shot in a Beirut alleyway by someone who'd never been identified and never would be. His passport, one of 27 he'd accumulated like a card player gathering suits, identified him as Mahmoud al-Khaled, businessman, age 43, born in Amman. The photograph showed a face deliberately unremarkable, receding hairline, wire-rimmed glasses, the beginning of jowls that suggested middle age and sedentary prosperity. He'd gained 15 pounds specifically to match that photograph, understanding transformation required commitment to physical details as much as documentary ones. The flight from Damascus to Milan would require 3 connections: Istanbul, Vienna, then finally Malpensa. Each transition offered opportunities for surveillance and consequently demanded perfect performance of the role he'd chosen. Mahmoud had long ago stopped thinking of these as deceptions. They were simply different versions of truth, carefully curated presentations of identity, no less real than the birth name he'd abandoned in Gaza City decades earlier, when the first Intifada taught him that survival belonged to those who could become multiple people simultaneously. In the bathroom mirror, cracked in one corner from a previous tenant's carelessness, he studied the face that would carry him through European security checkpoints. Unremarkable, that was the key. Not suspicious, not innocent, just occupying the vast gray middle ground where attention died from lack of stimulation. He'd practiced this face until it became autonomous, a mask that required no conscious effort to maintain. His eyes neither avoided nor sought contact. His posture suggested neither confidence nor anxiety. He existed in perpetual neutrality, the human equivalent of beige wallpaper. The neighborhood outside his window had begun its daily transformation from dawn quiet to morning chaos. Motorcycles rattled past, carrying impossible loads, refrigerators, chicken crates, entire families balanced on seats designed for two. A woman in a black abaya negotiated over the price of tomatoes, while her daughter, maybe 7 years old, watched with the grave attention children develop in places where survival requires constant calculation. Mahmoud observed them with the detached focus of someone cataloging data rather than experiencing human connection. The woman's negotiating style? Aggressive but not angry. The vendor's response? Resistance that would eventually yield. The child's expression? Already learning the mathematics of scarcity. He'd been that child once, though the memory felt like something that happened to someone else. Gaza in the 1970s, where the Mediterranean crashed against beaches patrolled by soldiers who spoke Hebrew and carried weapons that seemed immense to a boy whose father taught mathematics in classrooms where chalk was rationed and textbooks shared among 4 students. His mother had worked at a UN clinic, coming home with hands that smelled of disinfectant and stories she never fully told, trailing off mid-sentence as if the endings were too heavy to voice. Violence had punctuated his childhood like grammar in a language he'd learned to read before understanding its meaning. Explosions that shook plaster from ceilings, the crack of rifle fire that sent everyone flat against floors still warm from the day's heat. Checkpoints where soldiers younger than his older brother demanded papers with the bored aggression of people performing scripts they'd memorized but never questioned. And beneath it all, the persistent hum of humiliation, the daily erosion of dignity that occurred in small moments when adults were forced to explain themselves to adolescents with guns, when families waited hours to cross arbitrary lines drawn through neighborhoods that had existed for centuries. Other children responded with rage, throwing stones at tanks in gestures of defiance that accomplished nothing beyond temporary catharsis and frequent martyrdom. Mahmoud had watched these performances with analytical detachment even then, recognizing them as strategically useless. Courage without calculation was just theater. What Palestine needed wasn't more dramatic deaths, but systematic infrastructure, invisible networks that could sustain resistance across generations rather than burning bright and quick like phosphorus in darkness. This realization crystallized when Mahmoud was 17, standing on a rooftop watching Israeli jets streak overhead towards some target in southern Lebanon. The sound arrived seconds after the visual, physics demonstrating the gap between perception and reality, a lesson he internalized completely. Power wasn't about being seen or heard, it was about existing in the space between observation and understanding, operating in gaps that others didn't know existed. He taught himself Hebrew by stealing moments with a transistor radio, transcribing military communications into notebooks he kept hidden beneath floorboards. The language revealed itself slowly, each word a small victory in the larger campaign of understanding the enemy, not through hatred, but through grammar and syntax and the casual brutality of occupiers discussing logistics. By 18, he could pass as a native speaker, his accent suggesting Tel Aviv rather than Gaza, a skill that would prove invaluable in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The first intifada erupted when Mahmoud was 20, transforming occupied territories into laboratories of asymmetric conflict. While others threw rocks and Molotov cocktails, Mahmoud carried messages, folded papers with coded instructions tucked into the lining of shoes worn deliberately thin to avoid suspicion at checkpoints. He moved through Israeli patrols with the invisible confidence of someone who'd realized that the best disguise wasn't looking different, but looking exactly like what guards expected to see. Another quiet young man heading home, unremarkable and consequently beneath notice. His handlers recognized his talent for systematic thinking and operational security. By 25, he'd been recruited into Hamas's nascent financial apparatus, tasked with moving money through channels that left no traceable patterns.
This suited him perfectly. Violence attracted attention. Accounting created invisibility. While commanders planned spectacular attacks that dominated headlines for days before fading into the background noise of regional conflict, Mahmoud built infrastructure, networks of trust and transaction that would outlast any individual operation. Damascus became his operational base in 2000, Syria's regime providing sanctuary for Palestinian exiles as part of calculated regional positioning. The city suited him. Its ancient chaos provided cover, while its modern banking sector offered necessary tools. He established himself as a humanitarian coordinator, meeting with European NGO representatives in cafes where conversations about refugee assistance concealed discussions of logistics and finance.
His cover identity possessed its own reality. He did coordinate humanitarian aid, moving medical supplies and food through blockades, which made the deception simultaneously true and false, existing in the same liminal space Mahmoud himself inhabited. The network he built, informally called Al-Maslak, the Path, operated on principles of compartmentalization that would have satisfied any intelligence professional. Each cell knew only its immediate contacts. Information flowed through encrypted channels that appeared as mundane commercial traffic. Money moved through charitable organizations whose legitimate operations provided perfect cover for the percentage diverted toward weapons procurement and operational funding. Mahmoud orchestrated everything from Damascus, manipulating the invisible architecture of modern finance with the precision of someone who understood that power in the contemporary world belonged not to those who controlled territory, but to those who controlled information flow. Israeli intelligence flagged him during his first arrest in 1988. Administrative detention that stretched 7 months while interrogators tried to break someone who'd spent his entire life learning not to break. The sessions followed predictable patterns: aggressive questioning designed to provoke reaction, followed by isolation meant to erode resistance through sensory deprivation and manufactured hopelessness. Mahmoud responded with a performance of cooperative emptiness, providing answers that sounded helpful while revealing nothing. Officers described him in reports as unnervingly composed and potentially valuable if turned, recommendations that went nowhere because Mahmoud gave them absolutely nothing to work with beyond a repeated phrase in Arabic and Hebrew: "You already know what you want to hear." His release elevated his status within resistance circles. He became known as someone who could withstand professional interrogation, a reputation that opened doors at higher operational levels. But Mahmoud understood that reputation was dangerous. It made you visible, and visibility in his world meant becoming a target. So he deliberately cultivated parallel obscurity, declining leadership positions that would have required public presence, preferring to operate in the bureaucratic shadows where real power accumulated without spectacle. By 2005, he'd become indispensable to Hamas's international operations while remaining largely unknown outside intelligence databases. Intercepted communications suggested his involvement in the 2006 Shalit kidnapping, though his name never appeared in explicit messages, just coded references and financial transactions that matched the operation's logistics with suspicious precision. For Mossad analysts building files in air-conditioned offices in Tel Aviv, these fragments assembled into a portrait of someone far more dangerous than the suicide bombers who dominated headlines. Mahmoud represented systematic capability, the kind of threat that persisted across years and leadership changes because it was woven into organizational infrastructure rather than dependent on individual charisma. The weapons networks he designed exploited geography like a mathematician calculating angles. Routes through Sinai tunnels avoided drone surveillance patterns by moving during specific weather conditions when thermal imaging became unreliable.
Shipments from Sudan arrived in containers that passed through multiple ports, each transfer creating documentary confusion that made tracing origin points effectively impossible. When a warehouse explosion in Port Sudan destroyed one major shipment in 2007, Mahmoud responded not with anger, but with systematic purges, quietly eliminating anyone whose loyalty seemed even marginally questionable. Trust, in his operational philosophy, was binary, absolute or non-existent. By 2010, he appeared in at least 27 different passport databases under various identities, each supported by meticulously constructed backgrounds, complete with credit histories and social media footprints. Faris Nasser traveled as a textile merchant. Hani Sulan posed as an academic researcher. Each identity possessed its own wardrobe, its own habits, its own subtle variations in gait and gesture that Mahmoud could assume like suits of clothing. He'd learned that successful deception required committing to details others considered insignificant, the way different nationalities held cigarettes, variations in how men from Cairo versus Amman negotiated with taxi drivers, the specific rhythm of gestures that accompanied particular dialects. This elaborate construction of multiple selves sustained itself through Mahmoud's almost pathological attention to operational security. He avoided alcohol and crowds, understanding that both created opportunities for the kind of casual revelation that could unravel years of careful anonymity. His rare smiles served specific purposes: to disarm, to signal understanding, to create false intimacy that made others feel known while he remained unknowable. Friends, insofar as someone like Mahmoud had friends, described him as a man who listened far more than he spoke, absorbing information while revealing nothing beyond what served immediate tactical purposes. He kept notebooks filled with coded observations, numerical sequences that tracked meetings and contacts through systems only he fully understood. His obsession with even numbers, meeting times, hotel room numbers, phone codes, bordered on superstition, though Mahmoud would have rejected that characterization. Structure meant safety. Predictable patterns created the illusion of control in environments defined by chaos. Every ritual he performed was armor against the randomness that killed careless operatives, the small disciplines that accumulated into survival. But disciplines that created safety also created patterns, and patterns could be read by professionals trained to recognize them. While Mahmoud moved carefully through European capitals during 2009 and 2010, other professionals were moving equally carefully behind him, assembling fragments of observation into comprehensive surveillance. Mossad's Caesarea unit had been tracking him for months, logging his habits with the same methodical attention to detail that Mahmoud applied to his own operations. They noted his preference for trains over flights, his habit of arriving at stations exactly 17 minutes before departure, his tendency to occupy window seats in middle carriages where exits in either direction remained equidistant. The decision to eliminate him came through bureaucratic channels whose clinical language disguised the ultimate reality being authorized. In fluorescent-lit conference rooms, analysts presented PowerPoint slides documenting his network's reach and estimated impact. Lawyers reviewed international law implications, crafting arguments for why targeted killing outside declared combat zones could be justified under expanded definitions of self-defense. Political liaisons assessed diplomatic risks, calculating benefits justified potential fallout. Medical consultants evaluated toxin options with the detached professionalism of pharmacists discussing medication, measuring lethality against traceability, and symptom profiles against forensic detectability. The authorization moved upward through layers of command until it reached someone with authority to sign, transforming months of surveillance and analysis into operational reality. The code name assigned, Operation Cedar Mirror, meant nothing beyond serving as a filing reference, bureaucratic shorthand for the complex machinery of state-sanctioned killing about to be set in motion. Somewhere in this process, Mahmoud stopped being a person and became a problem requiring resolution, a linguistic transformation that allowed those involved to maintain the psychological distance necessary for ordering someone's death over coffee and approved budgets. 3 operatives were selected from Caesarea's roster based on psychological profiles, emphasizing specific traits, demonstrated ability to maintain cover identities under sustained stress, comfort with extended periods of solitary operation, and perhaps most critically, proven capacity for what internal assessments called moral compartmentalization, the ability to execute lethal missions without subsequent trauma or operational compromise. Their real names would never appear in any accessible file. For purposes of the Milan operation, they became Martin Weiss, Clara Roth, and Daniel Levy, identities supported by passports that cost months to forge and lifetimes to steal. Martin Weiss arrived at Milan's Malpensa airport on October 10, 2010, carrying a single piece of luggage and the weathered confidence of someone who'd made this journey countless times. His passport identified him as an Austrian software consultant traveling for client meetings, a cover story supported by a fabricated email trail and a hotel reservation in Milan's business district. He moved through customs with the practiced ease of someone who understood that confidence was the best disguise, not arrogance, but the settled assurance of legitimacy that came from believing your own performance. Clara Roth arrived 6 hours later through a different terminal, her German
passport claiming she was a graduate student researching Renaissance architecture. Her luggage contained notebooks filled with careful sketches of cathedral facades and annotated maps of Tuscan churches, props that had required weeks to prepare but would justify her presence in any circumstance requiring explanation. She moved through the airport as someone invisible through ordinariness, neither beautiful enough to attract attention nor unusual enough to be remembered. Daniel Levy completed the team's arrival the following morning, his Israeli passport declaring him a photographer documenting Italian landscapes for a European travel magazine. His camera equipment was professional quality and completely functional, each lens and filter carefully selected, not just for cover story, but for potential operational utility. Telephoto lenses that could photograph targets from considerable distance, memory cards that stored encrypted data beneath layers of vacation snapshots, a camera bag whose internal structure concealed compartments that airport X-rays interpreted as standard photographic padding. They established themselves in an apartment near Milano Centrale, a 4th-floor walk-up rented under the identity of a deceased Italian businessman whose death certificate had been carefully misfiled in administrative systems, creating a ghost who could sign leases and maintain utilities without existing in any traceable way. The apartment's location provided immediate access to transportation hubs while remaining sufficiently distant from tourist concentrations, where foreign operatives might attract unwanted attention from local security services conducting their own surveillance of surveillance. Inside, they assembled a command post whose sophistication contradicted the modest exterior. Encrypted satellite uplinks connected them to handlers in Tel Aviv, who monitored the operation's progress through hourly status reports transmitted in burst communications that lasted milliseconds and appeared in commercial telecommunications traffic as random noise. Surveillance equipment allowed them to monitor Mahmoud's hotel room through sensors placed during a brief intrusion conducted while he attended a meeting across the city. Microphones smaller than shirt buttons, motion detectors disguised as electrical outlet cover plates, thermal sensors that tracked his movements through walls. The intelligence they gathered confirmed what months of prior surveillance had suggested. Mahmoud followed predictable patterns while believing himself unpredictable. He varied his morning routines,
sometimes coffee in the hotel lobby, sometimes a walk to a nearby cafe, but always returned to his room by 9 a.m. He made brief phone calls in Arabic, conversations carefully cryptic but occurring at regular intervals. He spent long periods standing at his window, staring at Milan's morning chaos with the stillness of someone conducting internal calculations invisible to external observation. When surveillance detected him purchasing a train ticket to Rome for October 15th, the operation entered its terminal phase. Final authorizations came through from Tel Aviv. Equipment was tested and retested. Contingency plans for potential complications were reviewed until every team member could recite responses to scenarios ranging from mechanical failure to unexpected security presence, to Mahmoud altering his plans at the last moment. The toxin selected represented decades of research into untraceable poisons conducted in laboratories whose existence was classified at levels that required special authorization even within intelligence communities. Dimethylmercury offered specific advantages that made it nearly perfect for this application. Extreme toxicity requiring only microscopic doses meant delivery systems could be minimal and easily concealed. Delayed onset that could be calibrated to occur hours after exposure allowed operatives to establish complete separation from the target before symptoms manifested. And symptom profiles that mimicked cardiac arrest meant forensic pathologists would interpret death as natural unless specifically searching for mercury compounds. And even then, the chemical form used was designed to degrade rapidly, making definitive identification difficult even for toxicologists who suspected poisoning. The delivery mechanism was equally sophisticated, representing the accumulated wisdom of operations dating back to the Cold War, when both sides developed increasingly creative methods for administering lethal substances without direct contact. A modified aerosol device, disguised as a common travel deodorant canister, contained the toxin in a chemical membrane activated by sustained vibration. The device's internal timer would trigger release during train travel, when constant motion provided natural activation conditions while making exact moment of exposure impossible to determine. The container would be discarded at an intermediate station, ensuring physical evidence vanished long before investigators began their work. The morning of October 15th arrived with the crystalline clarity that sometimes precedes significant events, as if atmosphere itself recognizes the weight of what's about to unfold. Mahmoud woke at 6:47 a.m., earlier than usual, though surveillance logs provided no explanation for the variation. He showered, dressed in the conservative business attire he favored for travel, and packed his briefcase with the methodical care he applied to everything: 3 pens arranged by color, notebook containing his indecipherable numerical sequences, the paperback Machiavelli he'd been reading in fragments for weeks. In the apartment near the station, the Caesarea operatives conducted final equipment checks with the ritualistic precision of surgeons preparing for complex procedures. Weiss verified his surveillance devices. Roth tested the modified aerosol canister one final time, confirming the vibration sensor's responsiveness and the timer's accuracy. Levy established communication protocols with Tel Aviv, receiving final authorization transmitted in a code phrase that meant nothing to anyone intercepting the transmission. Weather remains favorable for travel. They moved to Milano Centrale separately, each arriving by different routes and maintaining careful separation in the station's vast spaces. Weiss positioned himself near the ticket kiosks where Mahmoud would arrive. Roth browsed a newsstand, apparently absorbed in magazine covers while tracking target movement through peripheral vision. Levy waited in the cafe, his camera equipment arranged on the table before him, like props in a performance he'd rehearsed until every gesture became autonomous. Mahmoud arrived at precisely 9:53 a.m., 17 minutes before the scheduled 9:10 departure of Intercity 582.
He moved through the station with practiced efficiency of someone for whom train travel had become routine, navigating crowds without apparent effort while maintaining constant awareness of surroundings, a skill developed over decades of operating in environments where surveillance could come from any direction. He purchased an espresso from a kiosk, drinking it quickly while standing rather than sitting, his eyes moving across the station's architecture with the assessing attention of someone mapping escape routes even during mundane transactions. Weiss followed at careful distance, maintaining the separation that professional surveillance requires, close enough to track movement, distant enough to avoid pattern recognition should the target possess counter-surveillance awareness. In his earpiece, nearly invisible and tuned to frequencies commercial scanners couldn't detect, he heard Roth's voice transmitting a single encoded pulse, target proceeding to platform. The train waited at platform 7, its carriages gleaming in morning light filtered through the station's glass ceiling. Passengers boarded with casual inefficiency of civilian travel, families struggling with luggage, business travelers absorbed in devices, tourists consulting maps and tickets with expressions of mild confusion. Mahmoud boarded carriage 4 exactly 9 minutes before departure, locating his assigned window seat with quick efficiency before settling in and removing his paperback from the briefcase. 2 minutes later, Clara Roth boarded the same carriage, taking a seat 2 rows behind Mahmoud's position. Her placement had been calculated precisely, close enough to activate the aerosol device when conditions aligned, distant enough to avoid any association should the target notice and remember her. She carried a smartphone and a fashion magazine, props that justified her presence while providing activities that appeared absorbing enough to discourage conversation from adjacent passengers. Daniel Levy boarded the next carriage forward, positioning himself where he could monitor communications and coordinate responses to any unexpected complications while maintaining physical separation that prevented the team from being visually linked should security footage be reviewed later. His camera remained ready, ostensibly for photographing Italian countryside, but actually available for documenting anything operationally relevant. At exactly 9:10 a.m., Intercity 582 departed Milano Centrale with the smooth acceleration of modern rail travel. Mahmoud opened his paperback, settling into the reading posture he'd maintained countless times before, unaware that molecular-level violence was about to begin in the air around him. The train accelerated through Milan's outskirts, industrial spaces,
giving way to agricultural landscapes as northern Italy scrolled past windows where passengers watched without really seeing, their attention absorbed by devices or thoughts or the peculiar trance that train travel induces. 15 minutes into the journey, when the train had achieved cruising speed and settled into the rhythmic motion that would persist for hours, Clara Roth reached beneath her seat with practiced casualness, adjusting her bag while activating the concealed aerosol device. The mechanism engaged with vibrations imperceptible to human sensation, triggering chemical membranes that began releasing toxin in measured doses calibrated to disperse through the carriage's ventilation system. The poison entered air circulation as invisible mist, molecules designed to cross biological membranes and interfere with cellular processes in ways that would manifest hours later as cardiac failure indistinguishable from natural causes. The next 90 minutes unfolded with the mundane rhythm of ordinary travel that made what was occurring beneath visible reality even more remarkable. Passengers read and dozed and worked on laptops and stared through windows at scenery that existed primarily as background to private thoughts. Children fidgeted in seats while parents negotiated behavioral boundaries through expressions and whispered warnings. Business travelers typed emails that seemed urgently important in the moment but would be forgotten by tomorrow. And through it all, Mahmoud sat reading Machiavelli's observations about power and deception, the irony of his choice completely invisible to everyone, including himself. At 10:45 a.m., he rose and made his way to the cafe car, moving with the slightly stiff gait of someone who'd been sitting too long in one position. Surveillance footage, reviewed later by Italian authorities once Mahmoud's real identity was revealed, would show him ordering an espresso and drinking it alone at a small table, his expression neutral, his behavior unremarkable. Nothing in his appearance suggested that his body was already processing the poison that would stop his heart, molecular machinery disrupting cellular processes in ways too subtle for conscious awareness, but devastating in accumulated effect. He returned to his seat at 11:10 a.m., settling back into his reading, though observers might have noticed him shifting position more frequently than before. Subtle signs of discomfort he dismissed as ordinary travel fatigue. Clara Roth, seated 2 rows behind and apparently absorbed in her smartphone, made a minute adjustment to the air vent above her seat, redirecting circulation in ways that increased toxin concentration around Mahmoud's position without creating patterns dramatic enough to attract attention from other passengers. By 11:35 a.m., Mahmoud's complexion had begun showing subtle changes, a pallor that might be attributed to poor sleep or mild illness, nothing that suggested medical emergency. He reached for water, drinking deeply before returning to his notebook, where he began writing numerical sequences with the focused attention of someone working through calculations. His hand moved across pages with increasing irregularity, numbers becoming less precise, lines wandering from the structure he typically maintained with obsessive consistency. The cough started as something he barely acknowledged, a throat clearing that happened once, then again, then developed into a pattern that made adjacent passengers glance up briefly before returning to their own concerns. Mahmoud reached for water again, drinking while his breathing showed the first subtle signs of labor that he interpreted as nothing more than irritation, perhaps dust in the ventilation system, were the beginning of a minor cold that would pass without consequence. At 12:15 p.m., as the train approached the outskirts of Florence, Mahmoud stood with visible effort, his movements carrying the unsteadiness of someone whose neurological systems were beginning to fail in ways he couldn't yet recognize or articulate. He moved toward the lavatory with deliberate steps, one hand briefly steadying himself against seatbacks as the carriage's motion seemed to increase, though nothing had changed except his own deteriorating equilibrium. Inside the cramped lavatory, fluorescent light reflected off surfaces designed for easy cleaning, everything white and stainless steel and aggressively functional. Mahmoud locked the door and leaned against the sink, his reflection in the small mirror showing features that had become unfamiliar, skin too pale, eyes carrying a distance that suggested internal systems beginning their catastrophic cascade toward failure. His breathing had become noticeably labored, each inhalation requiring conscious effort as cardiac rhythms began deteriorating under the toxin's relentless chemical assault. He tried to wet his face with cold water, hands fumbling with faucet controls as peripheral nervous systems failed. His vision began narrowing, edges darkening as blood pressure dropped and brain tissue received insufficient oxygen to maintain normal consciousness. He recognized what was happening with the analytical detachment that had characterized his entire adult life: cardiac arrest, probably fatal, occurring in a locked bathroom on a train between cities where medical response would arrive too late to matter. His last conscious thought, insofar as such things can be reconstructed, was probably numerical, calculating odds of survival, measuring time against distance to the next station, performing the mathematics of mortality, even as the capacity to process those mathematics dissolved. Then consciousness faded through stages of progressive dimming until Mahmoud al-Khaled, or rather the man who'd been performing that identity along with 24 others over decades of careful construction, ceased experiencing anything at all. His body settled against the sink, muscles relaxing as neurological signals ceased their transmission. Eyes remained open but unseeing, fixed on the lavatory ceiling's fluorescent fixture as if contemplating some final mystery. Breath slowed, stopped. Heart rhythms that had sustained him through 43 years of life stuttered into irregular patterns before stopping entirely. And in the silence that followed, Nothing marked this as different from cardiac arrest induced by any number of natural causes, except the invisible presence of molecular fragments that would degrade too quickly for most forensic analysis to detect. Meanwhile, Clara Roth had disembarked at Florence precisely on schedule, her departure timed to occur during the period when Mahmoud would be incapacitated, but before his absence attracted attention from other passengers. She moved through the station with practiced efficiency of someone who'd rehearsed every step, disposing of the aerosol canister in a recycling bin, specifically selected because automated waste processing would destroy all physical evidence within hours. By the time she boarded a connecting train toward Vienna, the device that had delivered Mahmoud's death had already begun its journey toward industrial incineration, physical evidence transforming into ash and gas, while investigators wouldn't even know evidence needed to be sought. Weiss and Levy remained on the train until Rome's Termini station, disembarking separately into crowds that absorbed them completely. Within minutes, they'd separated, each following predetermined routes toward airports in different cities, traveling under alternate identities toward destinations in different countries. By nightfall on October 15th, all three operatives had left Italy entirely, their cover identities dissolving back into the bureaucratic void from which they'd been temporarily constructed. At 10:47 p.m., the conductor knocked on the lavatory door, initially with polite restraint. Passengers sometimes occupied facilities for extended periods without sinister implications. But when repeated knocking produced no response and the locked indicator remained engaged for an unreasonable duration, protocol required intervention. He used his master key, expecting at worst to find someone who'd become ill during travel, at best an accidentally locked door with no one inside. What he found instead was Mahmoud's body, slumped in the position it had assumed during the final moments of consciousness. The conductor's immediate reaction, shock giving way to training, triggered a practiced sequence of responses. Secure the area, summon emergency services, notify train authorities, prevent passenger panic through carefully managed information control. Within minutes, the train had been diverted to an emergency stop at a station equipped to handle medical situations that regular platforms couldn't accommodate. Emergency medical personnel arrived within 15 minutes, working through protocols designed for situations exactly like this: potential cardiac arrest on public transportation, time-sensitive intervention in environments not configured for medical procedures. But their assessment quickly confirmed what professional responders recognize with practiced efficiency. This patient was beyond resuscitation, had been for at least 30 minutes, based on body temperature and visible evidence of cellular death in extremities. They noted these findings with clinical precision. Male, apparent age early 40s, no visible trauma, no signs of struggle, condition consistent with cardiac arrest of unknown origin. Italian police sealed Carriage 4 as a matter of standard procedure, while emergency personnel completed their assessment. Passengers were moved to other carriages with minimal explanation, told only that a medical situation required temporary isolation of the affected area. Most complied with the mild annoyance of people whose travel plans had been inconvenienced, but not fundamentally disrupted. None realized they'd been sharing space with an assassination whose perfection lay precisely in this invisibility, violence that looked like everything except violence. Death, designed to pass as the kind of random biological failure that claims people daily across the world without investigation beyond confirming the obvious. The body was transported to Rome's Sapienza University Medical Center, where initial examination revealed exactly what the operatives had calculated it would: internal systems showing catastrophic failure consistent with cardiac arrest, lungs displaying mild discoloration that might indicate chemical exposure, or might simply reflect normal variation in autopsy findings, no external trauma, no defensive wounds, nothing suggesting foul play beyond the statistical improbability of a healthy 43-year-old man suffering spontaneous cardiac failure during routine train travel. Then someone ran the fingerprints,
and the carefully constructed fiction of Mahmoud al-Khaled, businessman from Amman, dissolved instantly when the database returned a match for Mahmoud Abu Tariq, senior Hamas operative wanted by multiple intelligence services, subject of active investigation across 3 continents, possessor of at least 27 documented false identities, and suspected involvement in operations that had killed dozens and facilitated the movement of millions in weapons funding. The revelation transformed everything while changing nothing about physical reality. The body remained the same, its cardiac tissue still showing identical patterns of failure, but its meaning underwent complete metamorphosis, from tragic but unremarkable to geopolitically significant, from medical curiosity to international incident requiring immediate escalation through diplomatic and intelligence channels that operated far beyond the jurisdiction of Italian medical examiners who'd simply been trying to determine cause of death. Within hours, encrypted communications began flowing between Tel Aviv, Brussels, Washington, and half a dozen other capitals where intelligence professionals recognized immediately what local authorities had to discover through investigation. This had the signature of a targeted killing, specifically the kind of sophisticated operation that only a small number of state actors possessed the capability and will to execute. The method, untraceable toxin administered in a public space through a delivery system that left no physical evidence, matched known Mossad operational templates refined over decades of conducting similar operations across multiple continents. Italian security services began the painstaking work of reviewing surveillance footage from Milano Centrale and the train itself, discovering patterns that seemed unremarkable in isolation but assembled into something deeply suspicious. 3 individuals had appeared repeatedly in proximity to Mahmoud during the hours before his death, their movements synchronized with his in ways that suggested either remarkable coincidence or careful coordination. Their faces, when enhanced through facial recognition software, matched no databases. Their passports, when investigated, revealed themselves as sophisticated forgeries using stolen identities from citizens across Europe who'd had documents compromised through burglaries and lost luggage over the previous decade. The scandal carried echoes of the 2010 Dubai operation when Mossad operatives had used nearly identical techniques: forged European passports, coordinated surveillance, carefully staged assassination designed to look like natural death to eliminate Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mabhouh in a luxury hotel. That operation's exposure had triggered international condemnation and diplomatic tension that strained relationships between Israel and nations whose citizens' identities had been stolen for operational purposes. The Rome incident promised to reignite all these tensions while raising uncomfortable questions about European sovereignty and the limits of intelligence operations conducted on Allied territory without notification or consent. Italy demanded explanations through diplomatic channels, formal requests that climbed through bureaucratic hierarchies until reaching levels where such requests could be either addressed or strategically ignored. Israel's foreign ministry responded with carefully calibrated statements expressing no knowledge of the incident while noting the general threat posed by terrorist operatives who moved through European territories planning violence. Behind closed doors, different conversations occurred. Intelligence liaison meetings where Italian counterparts expressed outrage while simultaneously requesting operational details that might improve their own capabilities. Professional courtesy among services who understood that today's enemy of Israeli operations might be tomorrow's target, requiring similar intervention. Media coverage erupted with predictable intensity, journalists constructing narratives from fragments of information and intelligent speculation. Headlines proclaimed "Phantom Death on Moving Train" and "Invisible Hand of Israeli Intelligence Reaches Across Borders." Editorial pages divided along predictable lines, some condemning extrajudicial killing and sovereignty violations, others noting that terrorists who targeted civilians
forfeited protection of international law. Still others questioning whether certainty about Israeli involvement was warranted, given lack of definitive proof beyond circumstantial patterns and operational similarity to previous known operations. For Hamas, Mahmoud's death demanded immediate response, even as organizational leadership processed the dual shock of losing a critical facilitator and recognizing that no distance, no identity, no operational security could guarantee protection from enemies possessing both capability and will to reach across any border. In Gaza, thousands attended symbolic funeral ceremonies, waving flags and chanting vows of vengeance, while speakers praised Mahmoud as a martyr of precision, someone who'd fought with intellect rather than guns, and consequently deserved memorialization as representing Palestinian resistance at its most sophisticated. The demonstrations carried genuine grief mixed with performative elements required by political circumstances, public displays of unity and defiance that served multiple audiences simultaneously. For internal consumption, they demonstrated organizational resilience and commitment to continuing resistance despite losses. For external observers, they projected strength and determination to persist regardless of setbacks. And beneath both performances existed the genuine reality of people mourning someone they'd known, however imperfectly, as a comrade in a struggle that had consumed entire lives across multiple generations. In Tel Aviv, the event passed without public ceremony or acknowledgement. Inside Mossad headquarters, analysts archived operational files with clinical detachment, documenting lessons learned and noting elements of execution that had proceeded flawlessly versus aspects requiring refinement for future operations. For them, emotion held no place in professional assessment. An objective had been achieved. Hamas networks in Europe would be disrupted, at least temporarily, while the operation demonstrated Israeli capability to reach targets anywhere in the world when sufficiently motivated. That some within the organization felt the weight of what had been done, another name erased, another file closed, another cycle of violence perpetuated rather than ended, remained unspoken beneath layers of professional necessity and bureaucratic language that transformed moral complexity into operational assessment. The investigation proceeded through institutional channels with the persistence of machinery designed to grind forward regardless of political considerations. Italian prosecutors assembled timelines and analyzed forensic evidence and interviewed passengers who remembered nothing useful because there had been nothing to remember, just ordinary people conducting ordinary travel that happened to include an extraordinary death occurring invisibly among them. Toxicologists detected trace mercury compounds in tissue samples, but couldn't determine their precise form or origin, the chemical structure having degraded exactly as designed, leaving signatures too ambiguous to constitute definitive proof of anything beyond possible exposure to environmental contaminants that might appear anywhere. The pathologist who performed the autopsy wrote a private note in his journal that would never appear in official reports. Too clean, cellular degradation without visible poisoning, damage patterns too symmetrical to be natural. This was designed by someone who understood exactly what forensic examination would reveal and ensured it would reveal almost nothing useful. But professional observations carry no evidentiary weight in legal proceedings, and suspicion without proof remains just suspicion regardless of how well informed. European security services conducted their own assessments, producing classified reports that circulated through intelligence communities with careful restriction of information too sensitive for general distribution. The consensus, insofar as consensus emerged from ambiguity and cautious calculations, was Israeli operation.
Too sensitive for general distribution. The consensus, insofar as consensus emerged from agencies with competing interests and varying relationships with Israeli counterparts, acknowledged operational sophistication while condemning the sovereignty breach.
Quietly, several services requested technical briefings on the apparent methods used, professional curiosity about capabilities that might prove useful when their own national interests required similar interventions against targets who'd placed themselves beyond legal reach through geographic distribution and operational security. Weeks became months. Headlines moved to other crises, media attention shifting with the relentless velocity of news cycles that couldn't sustain focus beyond immediate novelty. Mahmoud's death dissolved into the category of events everyone believed they understood, but no one could prove definitively, existing in that peculiar liminal space where informed speculation becomes accepted truth without ever achieving the status of documented fact. Italian authorities eventually classified the investigation as suspended pending new evidence that would likely never materialize. The case file remained open technically, but inactive practically, gathering digital dust in archives where such files accumulate like sediment, marking moments when questions exceeded answers and uncertainty prevailed despite everyone's best efforts. For Hamas, the organizational response required immediate practical adjustments, even as political necessities demanded public defiance. Mahmoud's networks underwent complete reorganization, each contact reassessed for potential security compromise, each financial channel scrutinized for possible exposure to surveillance that had presumably existed for months or years before the assassination made its presence undeniable. New protocols emphasized even greater compartmentalization, reducing individual knowledge to absolute minimum necessary for immediate operational requirements, while accepting that this distributed ignorance would reduce efficiency in exchange for improved security. The younger operatives who rose to fill vacuums left by Mahmoud's elimination studied his methods while noting the mistakes that had led to his exposure and death. They absorbed lessons about operational security and the necessity of constant variation in patterns, while paradoxically recognizing that some patterns remained necessary for maintaining organizational function. They inherited his infrastructure while lacking his restraint, his patient accumulation of trust and demonstrated competence, his understanding that systematic building of capability mattered more than spectacular demonstrations that attracted attention without producing strategic advantage. In this way, the assassination that had been calculated to disrupt Hamas operations instead accelerated evolution toward more decentralized, more radical, less controllable organizational structures. The tacticians who understood that violence required strategic calculation were being systematically eliminated, leaving leadership positions to fill with individuals driven more by ideology than analysis, more committed to performative resistance than effective operations. Israel had removed a precise threat while inadvertently creating conditions for less precise, less predictable, potentially more dangerous future challenges. The larger truth revealed by Mahmoud's death extended beyond any single operation or immediate consequences. It demonstrated the existence of a global system where certain individuals could be marked for elimination by states possessing the resources and will to execute judgments regardless of geographic boundaries or legal jurisdictions, where death could be delivered through mechanisms so sophisticated that distinguishing assassination from natural causes required forensic capabilities beyond what most nations possessed, where sovereignty meant nothing when powerful actors decided someone must die, and no international law or diplomatic protest could guarantee protection once targets had been selected and operational authorization granted. This system operated through invisible architecture of surveillance and analysis and bureaucratic decision-making that transformed moral questions into technical problems requiring operational solutions. It functioned through language that sanitized killing into resolution of security challenges, that described human beings as problems requiring elimination, that allowed those involved to maintain the psychological distance necessary for ordering deaths over conference tables in fluorescent-lit rooms where violence existed only as abstract projections on PowerPoint slides. And it persisted because enough people in enough positions of authority had concluded that certain threats justified exceptional measures, that legal constraints designed for conventional conflicts couldn't address asymmetric warfare conducted by non-state actors who exploited the protections of international law while rejecting its constraints. The logic was simultaneously compelling and horrifying. Compelling because it addressed real security challenges that conventional approaches struggled to resolve. Horrifying because it established precedents that eroded principles everyone claimed to value until those principles became inconvenient to immediate interests. Mahmoud al-Khalid, or rather the man who'd performed that identity along with so many others, became another name in databases recording eliminated threats, another file closed, another operation archived in classifications that would remain secret for decades, if not permanently. His death changed nothing fundamental about the conflict that had produced him, the occupation that had shaped him, the resistance movement that had employed him, and the intelligence apparatus that had killed him. The machinery of violence continued its perpetual operation, grinding forward with the relentless inevitability of systems that had achieved self-sustaining momentum beyond any individual's capacity to alter or escape. The train still runs between Milan and Rome, departing Milano Centrale each morning with passengers who board unconscious of history that occurred in spaces they now occupy. Commuters sit in carriage 4, reading newspapers and checking devices, while unaware that someone died invisibly among the same seats they now fill with their ordinary presence. The lavatory has been cleaned thousands of times since that October morning, its surfaces scrubbed with industrial chemicals that erase biological traces while leaving the space itself unchanged, functional, and aggressively unremarkable. Nothing marks the location of Mahmoud's death because that's precisely how perfection appears in these operations, ordinary, unremarkable, leaving no trace that anything extraordinary ever occurred in this mundane space where people conduct the routine business of traveling between cities. The foam that collected at his lips has been washed away. The faint almond scent that briefly contaminated the air has dissipated completely. The molecular fragments that killed him have degraded beyond detection or dissolved into waste systems that carry them toward treatment facilities where they'll be neutralized among millions of gallons of water processing biological material from a city of millions. The absence of evidence stands as testament to operational success, proof that violence can be executed with such precision that it becomes indistinguishable from the random biological failures that claim lives daily across the world. And in that indistinguishability lies both the perfection and the horror of modern assassination. The transformation of murder into something that looks like anything except murder. The erasure of individuals through methods so sophisticated that certainty dissolves into permanent ambiguity, leaving behind only questions without satisfying answers and suspicions without definitive proof. This is the world Mahmoud al-Khalid inhabited and understood better than most, a world where appearance matters more than reality, where survival depends on controlling information rather than territory, where the most dangerous threats operate invisibly until the moment they become lethal. He'd spent his entire adult life mastering the rules of this world, building systems that functioned through obscurity and compartmentalization, becoming a shadow that moved through hostile territories for decades without being caught. But shadows require light to exist, and eventually every pattern becomes visible to observers patient enough to watch and skilled enough to recognize significance in details others dismiss as noise. Mahmoud's discipline created the invisibility that sustained him for years, but discipline itself becomes a pattern if applied consistently enough. His survival depended on variation within structure, but maintaining effective operations required enough consistency that eventually those patterns could be read by professionals trained specifically to recognize them. In the end, he died as he'd lived, invisibly, precisely, according to calculations performed by people who understood that patience and systematic observation could defeat any operational security if applied with sufficient resources and time. The irony, insofar as such situations contain irony, is that the very sophistication that made him valuable also made him vulnerable. A less capable operative might have survived through incompetence that created chaos too unpredictable for surveillance systems designed to detect patterns.
In noise, Mahmoud's excellence made him identifiable, and identification made him eliminable. The morning after his death, the sun rose over Damascus, where he'd maintained his operational base, light touching rooftops where vendors began their daily routines of arranging produce and negotiating prices and complaining about everything from weather to politics. In Gaza, morning prayer calls echoed across neighborhoods where children walked to schools that Mahmoud's father had once taught in, their paths taking them past walls bearing graffiti, praising martyrs whose names they'd learned to recite without understanding who those individuals had been beyond the roles assigned them by history and political necessity. And on trains departing Milano Centrale, passengers board and find seats and open books or devices, or simply stare through windows at Italian countryside scrolling past, each person absorbed in private concerns that have nothing to do with invisible wars being fought across European cities by operatives whose greatest weapon isn't violence, but the ability to make violence look like anything else. They travel in spaces where someone died invisibly among them, unaware that the security they assume, the basic confidence that trains are safe and strangers are harmless, and tomorrow will arrive with the same reliable ordinariness as today, exists only because most people remain ignorant of the machinery operating constantly beneath visible reality. This machinery transforms murder into bureaucratic process, violence into administrative decision, human lives into problems requiring technical solutions. It operates through language that disguises killing as security operations, through classifications that bury truth beneath layers of restricted access, through systems designed specifically to ensure that most people never know what's done in their names or ostensibly for their protection. And it continues functioning with the relentless persistence of institutions that have achieved self-sustaining momentum beyond any individual's capacity to alter, powered by justified fears and legitimate security concerns, and the accumulated weight of precedents that make each subsequent operation merely another iteration of established practice. And trains continue running between cities, carrying passengers who remain blissfully unaware that violence travels among them invisibly, executed with such precision that it becomes indistinguishable from the random chaos that kills people daily across the world for reasons having nothing to do with politics or strategy or the invisible wars fought constantly beneath the surface of ordinary reality, where most people live their entire lives without ever recognizing the machinery operating perpetually just beyond their awareness. If you like stories like this and would want other Mossad spy narrations, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel.